For more, though, on how the markets are moving this morning, we are joined by Chris Markowski, the host of the Watchdog on Wall Street radio show and president of Markowski Investments. Chris, so great to have you on. We just got those jobless claims numbers a bit better than expected, but we're still talking 1.3 million Americans who filed for first-time unemployment benefits. How long-term of an effect do you think that this will time period have on consumer confidence?
Well, there's no doubt it's going to have an effect on consumer confidence because you had people not having money in their pockets, and also that lingering fear that the end of July is creeping up very, very shortly, where that $600 a week extra that the feds have been kicking in above state is going to go away. Now, you've got stimulus package talk, part, what is it, 3 or 4? I can't even remember which one that we're on now at this point in time, whether or not they're going to extend that or they're going to give some sort of back to work bonus. Plus, you couple the confidence that's being hit right now in regards to what's happening in Texas and Florida and Arizona. And frankly, in my opinion, I think that's probably the biggest hit right now is what's going to happen next and how that's going to play out.
So I'm curious your take. It seems like the health crisis has kind of been separated from the economic crisis, or at least from Wall Street. Why is it that the coronavirus cases, we're now at, I think, 60,000 new coronavirus cases a day in this country, why isn't that having a bigger impact on the market?
I think the markets also understand, unlike a lot of the way the media likes, unfortunately, the mainstream media likes to push a lot of these stories, is that imagine, and I live in the New York metropolitan area, during the height of our issues here, you couldn't get a test unless you had any sort of symptoms. Now, 60, 70, 80,000 tests a day in all these places, and anybody can get them. So I think the markets understand that this was going to happen, and it was going to basically work its way through the country in some way, shape, manner, or form. And I think the numbers in New York would have looked much different back in March if that was possible. So I think that the market's been able to digest those numbers a little bit differently than many others have been able to do.
Because we're hearing about a lot of testing issues, and in fact, people not being able to get tests or getting the results back like 6 weeks later. If the death rate were to creep up again, at this point, thankfully, it's still really relatively low. Would that make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's where everybody's really for day to day. I mean, it's something that I look at every single day, is trying to look at the number of deaths that are out there. Also try to look into the internals of some of the hospital numbers as well, or whether or not their ICUs are filled with COVID patients or they have other patients that outside of COVID. It's very, very important. If you start seeing the death toll numbers start to tick up, that would definitely be a major, major hit to the markets.
Okay. Really great insight on that front. I do want to switch gears a bit. United Airlines is now warning that massive layoffs could be in the works. They may have to lay off 36,000 workers about October 1st. That would happen, including 15,000 flight attendants, 11,000 customer service and gate agents, 5,500 maintenance workers, over 2,000 pilots. That's nearly half of United's workforce. Is now the time to steer clear of airline stocks, or do you think maybe this is a good long-term investment regardless?
Listen, whenever you hit any sort of a slowdown or recessionary period, to say the old saying out there, the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked. And there's certain companies out there that are going to be weaker than others. And you have to try to avoid those. I think if you're going to hit any sort of part of the airline industry, you're going to always want to go with where there's strength. Going into this, United had a myriad of different issues. Wasn't nearly as strong as some of the competitors out there. Some of the smaller airlines have been able to be a little bit more nimble. I find it fascinating that companies like JetBlue are actually opening up new routes to other areas in the country where they weren't flying, or they weren't flying as much, where you've got people going on staycations and flying rather than flying overseas because of what's going on. I think the ability for airlines to do that is going to be very, very important moving forward. United was a bit weak going in, and again, it's showing it right now.
I never had heard that expression about the tide and naked swimmers, which was just a really interesting visual there. So thank you for that. Airlines, though, did get a lot of government money. And part of the strings that were attached to that was that they would have to keep employees on the payroll. What do you think? Was this perhaps money not well spent? If they got these bailouts but are laying off workers anyway, and did the government perhaps think that the airline industry would have rebounded by now?
Oh, I think that they felt that it most certainly would have rebounded by now, most certainly fall. But again, we're looking out to October, and God willing, things get better, and United doesn't have to head in that direction, and maybe that things will change. We don't know, but I do think that the way the airlines were hit as they were hit, I think that it's going to look into the future. People starting to look at other forms of insurance and actually having to put more money away to protect for issues like this, and this can get into a whole world of another conversation and how executives are paid versus stock options and buybacks and airline companies buying back their stock when maybe they should have put that money away for a rainy day. So you bring up a very, very important issue. I don't think the jury's out yet when it comes to whether or not the government made the right decision on this.
Also, the retail sector we know has taken a huge hit in this pandemic. Brooks Brothers just filing for bankruptcy. This is a company, a retailer that's been around for about 200 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that this could be a good acquisition target for a larger company?
Well, I think that someone will step. It's got a hell of a brand. There's no doubt about that. 1818, I think the company was starting. You're right, about 200 years. I think somebody will come in and get the brand and try to obviously, take a look and cut where cuts are necessary. I don't think you're going to see the end of Brooks Brothers anytime soon. And listen, they're not the only ones. I mean, you've got Ann Taylor, Lane Bryant. They're closing. It's 1,200 stores. I think they have 2,800 stores. I think they're closing 1,200 of their stores. And yesterday also got word that Bed Bath & Beyond is closing 200 of their stores as well.
It is incredible what this sector is going to look like after the pandemic is over, which will hopefully be soon. Chris Markowski, host of the Watchdog on Wall Street radio show, and the president of Markowski Investments. So great to have you on this morning. Really appreciate it.